The NFL right now, it's just a wild league with how many young quarterbacks are finding immense amounts of success with little to no NFL experience under their belts. I have kind of an old school football mentality. I love defensive games. I'm a Dolphins fan because I love the 72 Dolphins, the history of it, and everything else. Um, and I had this old school mentality that quarterbacks generally needed to sit behind a veteran for several years, learn the ropes of how to be a professional, and then slowly transition into becoming a professional player. And then players like Andrew Luck or Russell Wilson or Peyton Manning, those guys were like the exceptions to the rule. But generally, that was the formula. And if you had to play a rookie right off the bat, like that, you were in trouble. That's not the way it is anymore. Um, Even if you looked at like Aaron Rodgers in his career, Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, right? He rode the bench for 3 years, and then in his fourth year, he finally got his chance to start, and he went 6-10. And he's gone on from that point to become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But he had the more traditional career trajectory that I thought was the way to develop a quarterback properly. But that's just not the case anymore. And I'm really not sure why young guys are finding so much success so early compared to the way that it used to be. I'm not sure if it's that colleges are preparing these guys a lot, just so much better for the next level, or if perhaps the rules of the game, everybody knows the rules of football have developed over the years to slowly favor the offense and particularly favor the quarterback with the way that penalties are called and the rules are all exist. Maybe it's the way that just the coaching, in the transition months from the end of your college career to when you start your pro career. Because, any of these quarterbacks, they're working with, throwing coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, mental coaches. There's just so much money in football, and there's so much money in development and so many, different coaches and different ways to develop these guys. Like maybe that's the reason why. But whatever the reason is, the results speak for themselves. It's a young man's game at quarterback now. There's just so many young guys that are dominating at quarterback, and obviously they have smaller sample sizes, so you don't want to say, oh, Daniel Jones is the next GOAT after one freaking game, but man, it's pretty clear that Daniel Jones is a very evident step up from the veteran Eli Manning there. And I'll admit, all week when I heard Daniel Jones was going to be the starter, I thought that was just a terrible idea. I thought it was short sighted by the Giants, because I still had that old school mentality that it's like, oh, you've got a good pro there in Eli. He can show this kid the ropes and teach him how to prepare week to week, and this kid can learn by Eli's example. And, that's Daniel Jones just came out and dominated in week one and really made me eat my words. I just think that the Giants, not a very good football team, no offense to the Giants, I thought that they were putting Daniel Jones in a position to fail. And, a guy who was drafted to such a big market and was almost unanimously hated as a draft pick, everybody hated the fact that they picked Daniel Jones. Like, why didn't we get Dwayne Haskins or, some of these other guys at quarterback? And Daniel Jones came out and just balled out, and you have to credit him for that. And you have to credit, the spark that he gave that offense. There's a lot more swagger out on that field. They were a lot more confident with Daniel Jones out there than they are with Eli Manning out there. And perhaps Pat Shurmur and the coaching staff over in New York saw that. I'm not watching Daniel Jones practice every day. They are watching him practice, and they're watching Eli practice. So, maybe they knew that Daniel was going to bring that spark to them. But, I mean, man, he played phenomenal. It was against the Buccaneers. He's got some harder games in front of him. Next week, he's got another good matchup in the Redskins. But the week after that, they play the Vikings. It's going to be really telling to see in that Vikings game what kind of player he is. But then you just think about the other guys like Gardner Minshew. I think Minshew he was a sixth round pick in the draft this year. And I think he's very clearly outperforming what Nick Foles' expectations were, or what we expected of Nick Foles for the Jaguars, who's a good veteran quarterback. You know, Kyle Allen clearly outplayed by far and wide outplayed what Cam Newton was able to do through the first 2 games of the season. I think if Kyle Allen was the quarterback there for all 3 games this year, the Panthers right now would be 3-0, and they would almost be in a driver's seat in that division, with the Falcons now being 1-2, Drew Brees being injured for the Saints. You know, it's and as a second-year player, Kyle Allen was just dominating compared to how good Cam Newton's been playing. Yeah, Rudolph is outplaying, I think, how Big Ben has been playing so far this year. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on for these young quarterbacks playing phenomenal. Kyler Murray, you know, he's on a terrible football team. Sure, they've got David Johnson and a couple of good receivers, but they've got no offensive line, no defense, and he's hella accurate. He's a very dynamic athlete. If they had a good O-line and a good defense, the Cardinals would probably be in the driving seat of their division, with the Seahawks not playing as well as you expected, the Rams not playing as well as expected either. You know, so it's a different league. Young quarterbacks, are quite literally the future. And, you know, it gives me a lot of optimism as a Dolphins fan that, you know, we're going to hopefully be able to find a guy next year with all of our draft capital that can come in and be an impact player right away. I'm not holding my breath about it, but I am feeling a lot more optimistic about the potential future of the quarterback position in general.